Have any of you guys ever made a mistake? I know I have, but I think the better question for me to ask is, have any of you ever made a mistake that consequences followed you? I know for me that there was a mistake that I made back when I was in high school that the consequences still follow me to this day. You see, back when I was in high school, in the middle of theater class, one of my good friends pulled me aside, and while everybody else was doing their one-act skits and practicing for it, he's like, "Hey man, you should play this game with me." He called it Magic, and at first I'm like, "Dude, that's like Pokemon. No way, I'm not a nerd, I don't want to play that." But it wasn't long after he continued to beg me to play that I played a game, and I was hooked. I loved it, and I found very quickly that I was actually naturally kind of good at it. Humble brag, right? But seriously, the more I played, the better I got, to the point where I very quickly became one of the better people in the school. And one of my friends, shortly after learning how to play, invited me to go play a small tournament at a local store. And that night, I got second, which gave me like $20 in prize. And the idea of making money off playing a game got me hooked. I was in. I was full throttle into learning how to become even better at this game. And the more I played at tournaments, the more I met new people, the more I began to realize that skill and practice could actually only get you so far. You see, Magic is what some people call a pay to win game. That if you don't invest money into it, eventually you're just going to stop winning because you can't compete against some of the better cards. It's just a fact. And for those of you that don't know, some pieces of cardboard like this can cost upwards of $20,000. That's like the price of a new car. Not a great one, but still a whole new car off the lot. And as a sophomore in high school, with little to no income, I knew that there was no way possible that I would ever be able to afford some of those cards. But there was a way around this, albeit an illegal one. You see, you can go online and you can find the real copies of these cards and you can go buy them for full price. But there are some people that have figured out exactly how, or really close to how to make one of these cards from scratch. And what they're called proxies, and what they do is they make imitation cards and they sell them online for a fraction of the price. Like that $20,000 card you can buy for 10. So naturally, very appealing. But I'm sure you can see where this story is going, right? Yeah. Well, in a moment of weakness and pride and greed, I bought them. I bought enough to make a deck. And so I go, and when the cards finally come in the mail, I go and I sleeve them up and I take them to the store, and I'm excited to play with my new $1,000 deck. And at first, no one said anything because I wasn't winning and nobody cared. But one week, when I made it to the finals, my opponent looked at me and he looked down at my card and he said, "Hey, let me see that." And not knowing what to do and kind of wanting just to play it off, kind of coy and sheepishly, I was like, "Yeah, dude, here you go." And I slid him the card. And he pulls it out of the sleeve and he looks at it and turns it over. And then he calls for the judge. And in that moment, my heart sank because I already knew what the judge was going to say. And the judge confirmed that the card was indeed fake. Immediately, I was disqualified from the tournament and asked not to come back to the store again. Everyone judged me. The people at the store, my friends, they shunned me and wouldn't let me call them or message them. Even those that I knew that could relate to me and the fact that they didn't have money, man, they were disappointed that I would ever stoop so low as to cheat to win at just a game. And to this day, even after all these years, still some people distrust and dislike me because they remember the decision that I made back then. People continue to identify me as a fraud. Even after I committed my time to playing this game, to teaching new young people how to enjoy the game that I've come to love, and to be a positive light in that community because there aren't many. Some people still choose to identify me as such. But here's the catch. And the truth that I want you guys to take away with you today is that I am not who I was, right? I have been made a new creation. And now I've committed to living in light of this grace that I have received. I'm not going to let what other people choose to identify me as shape who I am or affect how I perceive the truth that God has told me in my life. You see, I am not a fraud. I'm not a cheater, and I am not who others say that I am, but I am child of God, and that will not change. Now, here, I want you guys to turn with me to Luke chapter 15, verses 12 through 28. And I want to show you guys something. All right? So, Luke chapter 15, verse 12. It's the story of the prodigal son. And it says, "And the younger of them said to the father, 'Father, give me the share of the property that is coming to me. Give me my inheritance.' And so the father, without questioning, divided the property between his two sons. Now many days later, the younger son gathered all that he had and took for a journey into the far country, where he spent all of his money on reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in the country, and he began to be in need of food and shelter. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of the country, who sent him into the fields to feed the pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the food that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything to eat, not even that. But when he came to himself, when he came to his senses, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have enough bread, but yet here I am perishing in hunger? I'll arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son, but treat me as one of your hired servants.' And he arose and he came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him, and his heart was moved, and he felt compassion, and he ran and embraced his son and kissed him. And the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against you and before heaven, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Bring quickly the best robes and put it on him, and put a ring on his finger and shoes on his feet, and bring the fattened calf and have it killed, and let us have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine, which was dead, is now alive. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now, his older son was in the field, and he came and he drew near to the house, and he heard all this music and all this dancing, all this celebration that was happening, and was wondering what was going on. So he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, 'Your brother has come home, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has received him back safe and sound.' But he was angry. The older brother was angry and refused to go into this party. His father came out and entreated him. But he answered his father, 'Look, these many, many years I have served you, and I have never disobeyed your command, yet you never gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him.' You see, the second son in this story refused to accept that his brother has changed. His jealousy overwhelmed him, and so he began to identify his brother by his mistakes and chose to identify him based off his past and not who he was now. But the thing to notice in this story, that what the second son didn't know is that despite what he chose to identify his younger brother as, it didn't change who the father had made him to be. His father had restored his title to him. And because of that, dude, that son could complain all he wanted. He could call him all the names, he could judge him, but that was not going to take away the fact that the younger son had been redeemed and been brought back into the family. And the same is true with our lives. When we turn back to the Father and we ask for forgiveness and accept his grace, nobody can take away the grace that we receive. Nobody can take away our title as beloved children of God, and we are made a new creation. That can't be changed by other people. And that doesn't mean that we can't choose to walk away from that, but what it does mean is that no matter what the world is choosing to identify you as right now, it doesn't change who God has made you to be. So my hope for tonight is that you guys will be able to get together in your small groups and be able to dialogue this conversation about your experience with what the world has chosen to identify you as, and how you continue to find peace in your identity with Christ, regardless of what the world is trying to label you as. So guys, I love you. I'm excited to join with you in conversation, but if you would go connect with your leaders, get on those Zoom calls, those Google Hangout calls. If you're new and aren't plugged in with the group yet, feel free to comment down below with your name and your grade, and I'd be more than happy to get you plugged in with those groups. Guys, I love you, and I'm so excited to be able to spend some time with you just dialoguing this truth tonight. All right, see you guys in a second.